Hello, welcome to Fleet Auto News Podcast. I'm Caroline Falls, and today I'm going to be speaking with Jerome Carslake, Director of the National Road Safety Partnership Program at Monash University's Accident Research Centre. We're going to talk about some of the incredible safety programs he's involved with, mainly one that's come out of London and which is having a big impact on fleets here. I'm in lockdown in Sydney, overlooking Bondi Beach. Very lucky for that. What about you, Jerome? Welcome, and where are you?
I'm based down in Melbourne, and I totally empathise with everyone up in New South Wales. However, Carol, I think being stuck looking out of Bondi Beach, now, that's got to be one of the most choice spots to be caught in the lockdowns. Sitting in Melbourne, looking out over my crescent, it was nowhere near the same joy. And it was cold and miserable in Melbourne.
Yeah, well, I do feel blessed, and some of the days are warm enough to even pop in for a swim. But anyway, yes, amid lockdown, it's good that you and I have got a positive story to tell. And it came about, I've invited you to the podcast because I was listening to a webinar you were hosting, and I was just fascinated to hear about Sydney Metro's stipulations on suppliers, contractors. I jotted down a story idea, how Sydney Metro is changing the world. I know that's a bit grandiose, but it's sort of true, isn't it? I mean, firstly, let's talk about exactly what Sydney Metro is doing that's so transformative, Jerome.
I think you're exactly right. I think it's an opportunity, these major projects, and Sydney Metro has really taken it as a great leadership position, and it's twofold in how they've done it. Like one, they've used their market power and being, I guess, Australia's largest public infrastructure project to really pull through and say, look, when we're doing this, we can actually make a big impact and say, this is the safety standards we're going to operate on. This is what we expect of our suppliers, and this is what we expect of our contractors and all the different, because all of this project's happening right in the heart of our largest city, our global city. And when they do it, they want to make sure they don't hurt or injure or even worse, kill someone while they're building these projects. So they've got a great incentive to do it. And I think there's other, like down in Melbourne, similar thing, the Melbourne Metro and the related major projects sitting behind that, they're using the same market power to have that same influence.
So, from looking at other work that you've done and materials that you put out, we're talking about a particular strategy, a policy that's called CLOCS A. While it may roll off the tongue easily enough, what does CLOCS A stand for? Where did that come from?
Great question. So the origins of CLOCS A was really inspired and came out of the United Kingdom. And CLOCS stands for Construction, Logistics and Community Safety. And because we're looking at adapting it to Australia, hence the A at the very end of it. And the big thing is the UK developed it. It was specifically developed by Transport for London for the Crossrail project. And if we're talking big from our terms in Australia, we go to a whole new level when we go over into the European area. And this is a $55 billion Euro project. So obviously before they sort of left, and it sort of came about. And same thing, so TfL actually had a bad run of Greater London had a bad run where they had sort of 5 people killed by lorries in central London. And they're pulling this through. And they took, once again, TfL took a leadership position, and they said, look, this is unacceptable. We don't want to see our projects. We don't want to see trucks killing vulnerable road users. And we don't want to see the ripple impact as well that goes through when these things happen to the drivers and all those sort of components. So it's not about allocating blame to any group. It's about bringing everyone together. And so over in the UK, they stepped up and TfL, Transport for London, went ahead and developed this entire program. They did it very collaboratively, which is probably one of the most powerful components of it.
Wow. Similar to here, deaths in the workplace in trucks and vehicles are, I think, the second highest or the highest or second highest workplace fatality in Australia. So before we move on to talk about some of the benefits of the CLOCS strategy, do you think that this, as of today, unfamiliar acronym will become familiar? And if so, in which circles?
I totally agree. I think it will become quite familiar because over in the UK, it's become the standard. Because even though it started in central London, right? And TFL and they designed it in a way where it wasn't branded, it wasn't. TFL weren't looking for recognition, and in the road safety space, we referred to about the shared responsibility and how we can all do our part to try and reduce the risk on the roads. And what TFL did was they made the point saying, look, we'll develop this and hopefully others can learn and leverage off it and take it out. So what's happened is what Standard started there, they consolidated 6 or 7 other sort of ideas and programs and brought them together, and then it slowly spread all across the UK. And now all the projects, and the CEO, the chief executive, John Lamont, I think it was the past one for the Sydney Metro, when he was setting it up, he actually used to be the head of transport at, I think it was Manchester, if I recall. And when he came out, the first thing he said is I know this works. I know we need to put this in place. Because what it does is by actually creating a consistent, I guess, engagement approach, it's not just about the industry side, but it's also about the public. It's also about other sort of councils, organisations. So everyone's getting the same sort of message from the same sort of group, and it gives that confidence that everyone can sort of engage with each other, and you know what you're going for. So I think one of the worst things you can have is mixed messaging coming from different standards. It's a pain in the butt for industry. It's horrible for them. They won't get behind it. But it's also confusing for public and other road users. And I think that's where I really hope. And I remember once I was in Sydney and I actually saw a CLOCS branded truck from all the way over the UK that had been imported by some transport company in the UK because it has a logo on it. And I went, wow, the fact I could even recognise it driving around Sydney working on projects in there, and sort of says a lot about how once it's sort of put in, how it sort of holds its value.
Wow, that's amazing. And also to hear, that this guy from Manchester is sort of a key driver of it here in Australia, it just helps it to make a lot more sense. Look, I'm really keen. I was going to ask you about sort of more about who the supporters of it are here, but I think it's really time that we get into some of the nuts and bolts of what the policy is. I'm sure our listeners are saying, what exactly is this all about? So, maybe we can talk about some actual examples. For instance, the waste bin group Grasshopper got new truck livery to make it more reflective, to make it better to see in low light conditions that they were working in, as just one upgrade to help it win contracts with Sydney Metro for the Central Station works. Can you give us some other, maybe some of the stipulations or real life examples that are coming out of this new strategy?
Yeah, so at the moment, because it's very much, there's just a few projects, and the idea is create that standard over the next sort of couple of years as we pull this into place and develop it up and draw on. And because the best thing is you can go up and above and beyond what the legal, I guess, the minimum standard is. A bit like when you look at a Woolworths truck or other sort of sectors, they have that and it's set by Woolworths as to how they want to see Lynn Fox and subcontractors to move it around. This is what we're talking about in the construction sector. And Grasshopper is a really, really good example because here they are as a little company and they are able to use this exactly like it happened over in the UK. They used it as a chance to leapfrog over some of the larger competitors because they put these safety systems in place and they used it as innovation. And so when they put it in, and some of them are just quite basic, like site underrun protection, for example, like that's commonplace all throughout Europe. Whereas it's sort of mandatory on these sort of projects that are being set up basically in Melbourne and up in Sydney with the Sydney Metro sort of one. But it's also not just about the truck. Obviously, there's all the other elements, high visibility mirrors, markings, squawkers on the side, letting people know when the truck's sort of turning. The Grasshopper had a fantastic one where they used something called Patronus, which, as mentioned, puts a beam onto the ground, lets everyone know where the blind spots and where the truck should not be when you're sort of moving around it. But it also flows into the major logistics companies and construction, like Lang O'Rourke, for example, that's doing Central Station. We did a great webinar with them. And for them, it's really been around efficiency of managing that site, making so these vehicles can, they use telematics and planning, and so the trucks are never waiting long. There's no what we call this Heathrow effect where they've got to drive around the city waiting to be let in. They're basically in, loaded, back out, and they're always legal. And there's checks and balances. Driver training is another key component. And all this compiles together, and then they also engage the community around the sites as well. So this is this multi-pronged approach to try and reduce the risk, and it's really very much seeing the safe systems being applied within the sector.
Sounds amazing. What role is your organisation, the National Road Safety Partnership Program, playing in bringing CLOCS to a wider audience in Australia?
At the moment, I guess we've just been championing it and pulling together and I guess leading. We've established the Memorandum of Understanding of a steering group, and we have a number of organisations that have signed up to that, and we have a steering group that sits there of a broad range, which includes Sydney Metro, Transport for London, Truck Industry Council, ARTSA, and a number of others, all coming together. Amy Gillett Foundation as an example. It's nice and diverse as a group, and they're all coming together to guide us, and then we have the supporting partners, and anyone can sign up. The whole guide, this is exactly what Transport for London did. They set up this MOU, they then championed it and moved it forward, and they then, once they got all the different groups together, because there's nothing like sitting there and instead of everyone throwing stones at each other, if you're all sitting in the room and you begin understanding each other, that's when the magic really begins happening and seeing things through each other's lenses. And I think a simple thing is how many cyclists have probably sat in the truck? I'd say probably very few when you think about it from an urban, and vice versa. Some of these truck drivers, how many of them sat on a bike and experienced when a truck goes past? And I deliver the Sharing the Road Safely course down here in Victoria, which was developed by the Amy Gillett Foundation for the Melbourne Metro project, which is really based on the Transport for London CLOCS program. And part of that, there's like an online module, then there's a classroom module, and that's the one I deliver, and I love engaging with the truck drivers on it. And then there's the in the field one, where the truck drivers get out on the bike and they ride around the city and they follow this course and they think all about it and they reflect on it. And I remember once when I was walking out, I was chatting with a truck driver and I'm like, mate, did you get anything out of this? And he's like, nah, got nothing. So that's a shame. We walk along and he goes, however, must admit, when I was riding along, this bloody truck parked across a cycleway and the group got split in half. And I was sitting there with this truck and there's this traffic going past. And he's like, oh, and everyone's yelling at me from behind and I had to go around this truck into traffic. It scared the bejeebers out of me and that sort of stuff. And I went, well, what's your thoughts on that? He goes, oh, that's where I stop for my coffee every time, so I won't be doing that anymore. And I went, so you got nothing out of it? He goes, yeah, nothing.
He got a lot out of it, obviously. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the real secrets of it is bridging that and sharing it and making it enjoyable. And it's really practice-based learning.
Yeah, wow. So I can't imagine it, but is there any pushback or resistance from any quarters to like this sort of safety measures in CLOCS?
There always will be, because there's a lot of people sit there and they go, oh, what about the costs and these sort of components, and groups go, oh, it's too hard, and there's a big difference between Australia and the UK and all this. But I think what you do is you systematically put a plan. And what I love about the UK one, like it's 10 years, this is how you move along. They see all the technology components coming down the pipeline. And some people like the resistance, like with the costs, because you've got certainty, you meet those sort of standards, you enter into it, life actually gets a lot easier. And we've finished a case study called the Safe Load Program, and some of you guys may not know about it or not heard about it, which is probably the best thing if you've never heard about the program. But it was put in place by the, by the dangerous goods sector in regards to terminals, and all built up. And same story from them. There was all this resistance from some of the industry and smaller providers. Going, oh, we've got to put all these systems in place and training and all this. All of a sudden, when they got into it, they went, wow, we just moved, whatever site we move between, it's all the same. Our standards are the same. We're given the confidence. We can communicate the same. And through that consistency is power, is profitability and safety and efficiency. And that's exactly what they found in the Safe Load program. That's what they found over the CLOCS program in the UK. And I think that's what my feeling is. That's what we'll see here. And over in the UK, there was like a 47% reduction in fatal and serious crashes between heavy vehicle drivers and vulnerable road users. And for fleet, 37% less complaints.
Wow.
So,
this is in London, these stats.
This is over in London, and a total drop in 25% in collisions. So this has all been independently evaluated. The other part is I think then from a driver, there's 76% less likely to commit licensing offences as well, because I go back to the laying a raw component component. If you're guaranteed maybe 5, 6, 8 years, here's all these projects you get to work on, and you're not waiting around, you're moving, all the systems are in place, it's nice and easy for the truck driver. It helps with that front investments. And if you know what's coming down the pipeline for trucking technology, if you want to get the high vision cab, all these other sort of bits and pieces, if I invest this amount now, this is going to stay in the whole life of say, a CLOCS stand. And this is the big goal. Obviously, it's not in place at the moment. It's just operating in a few of the major projects, but the goal will be to make it easy and consistent across the entire country.
Wow. Finally, our audience is predominantly fleet management, and many are from local government with fleets that include heavy equipment. How can they get more information or participate in advancing CLOCS, Jerome?
Great question. I think the best one is get involved. Come join, reach out. You can become part of the MOU. There is no cost. It's not a legal agreement. It's a gentleman. So it's basically showing the commitment that we're all calling for it. Become involved in, and there's 4 technical groups. One's looking at, the vehicle, one's looking at the driver, one's looking at logistics and planning, and one's then looking at communications. And the goal is they'll all be pulling it together. And reach out to me, and there's a number of others we can send through material. We have the fact sheets, and we're even setting up for a bit of a ride along in September is our goal. So the idea of that is for getting some of the cycling leaders and others who have no idea or haven't sat in the truck to sit in the truck with a driver from other partners and experience life for these. And I think they're just amazing. If you're operating in an urban environment, the complexities, the stuff that can go on, and see it through their eyes. Because even though these things are one of the largest things on the road, for some reason, a lot of people just don't see them.
Yeah, wow. So the ride-along is sometime in September, yeah?
Yeah, so I think we're just looking at down at the moment, COVID dependent.
Of course.
And then our goal is we'll probably have a list and every sort of couple of months, every 2 months, I think it's the third Wednesday or Thursday, we'll look at doing it. And rotate it between our partners, our transport partners that are signed on as well. So 1 week we'll probably start off with some of the aggregates, and then or truck and dogs, and then we'll move a couple months to maybe the waste groups and sort of rotate back and forth between them all. And I think it's just such a great opportunity to provide that divide, because one of the things when I deliver the Sharing the Road Safely course, and the truck drivers, they're like, well, what are cyclists doing? And I'm like, oh, we've got this set ride along sort of thing where you can sit in a cab, but that's sort of set up in the city, and it's just like when get in, get out. But I think this is the way you actually change it. And you can tell truck drivers and go, look, actually the cyclists can get in the trucks and they can see it through your eyes.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Anyway, Jerome, it's been fantastic to talk to you. It is a positive story. CLOCS for our time, and thanks for your time.
Oh, it's fantastic. I like that. Thank you so much for your time, Caroline. Enjoy the Bondi Beach and the lockdown, and once again, I empathise with everyone in New South Wales.
Yeah.
And take care for everyone.
Yeah, same. Okay. Cheers, Jerome.
Cheers.